So, welcome back to the Battle for Wesnoth. I'm Kerlath, and last time we saw Sir Gerrick leave the company of Deoran and return to Wesnoth. But now we are come to catch up with the rest of them, Aphelior, Deoran, and Minister Hylas, who has been with us so far. So we've come across the cave, and since Meverin was turned, we don't know what exactly has been going on. And helpfully, the game tells us that most mounted units will probably not be too useful in this particular scenario. So, let's get started. Play our turn. So I started moving, and Mr. Hylas likes to bring his own particular kind of commentary. We've encountered a creature right over there. The sort of guardian, this particular unit is a little bit tough. So I start bringing out everyone else as well. But since we can't really move that far, Aphelior's movement is quite limited in cave terrain. As you can see here, that's the Eye Guardian, which was what was spotted earlier. It regenerates, it has pretty devastating ranged attack, so ideally the best thing to do would be to hit it with melee. But we have to get them there first. Start moving them all in, bit at a time. I'm not too particularly sure whether the elves are better than the humans inside the cave, so I decided to pick a mix of both. More enemy units now. Our Reverend. We haven't encountered them up until this stage, but they're a step up from the usual skeletons. So yeah, I wail on them with some melee attacks. Of course it decides to go after us with ranged attacks, and the Reverend gets in the way of us. So I decide to try and take it on while having other units deal with the Guardian that just sits there in the light. It's the one spot where there's actually light, unlike the rest of it, which is all dark cave. I believe it's one of the few lawful units that are actually enemies at this point. So we managed to deal with it. You only can take so much. Regeneration is pretty limited, as we'll soon see. Get a bit of healing done, get rid of everyone else, and secure the little area to the south. Over to the north is a bit of a watered off section, which I think looks a little bit interesting for Aphelior, so I send her off there in a moment. We also have these as our villages, a bit of a cave village if anything. Not too sure about the logistics, but I'm not going to argue too heavily on those kinds of things. Another enemy unit, and it's another ghoul. They're never happy to deal with, and you should always keep a healing unit nearby, ideally with the cure attribute. Of course he runs away. So I start moving Aphelior a little bit at a time, then go as far as I can when I know that she isn't going to be attacked almost straight away. There's a bit of ice and there's a bit of shallow water, so I guess that says a little bit about our climate. That ghoul is just in our sights, and he decides to turn and attack us. Well, not yet, but we'll see soon enough. Move Aphelior a little bit, and I decide to take the initiative. Why get struck when you can strike first? That being said, I didn't expect the ghoul to go after the shaman. Luckily I have Minister Hylas to handle that, but if Minister Hylas wasn't around, or if he got poisoned of all things, we'd have to try and find a village, which is a little bit of a hassle. We're nearly done with dealing with the ghoul though, so no problems there. I decided to bring more units in as well. Over in the watered off area, Ephelial manages to find himself a village, which is good, I suppose. It earns us a little bit of gold each turn. Cure a little more, explore a little more. It's quite a big map. You have 50 turns to get through it all and hopefully defeat the source of the undead. More undead from the south, a ghoul from the east. That's always a bunch of fun. Ephelial, I don't really want to put at risk since there's no one that can actually cure her alone right at the moment. And as you can see here, there's definitely fog of war, so we can't exactly see everything there is to offer. The only reason I moved her here is because up here there really isn't anything, and that's the edge of the map right there. There's a bit of movement in the darkness, but I'm determined to not waste too much time on that. Keep everyone recovered, keep shooting away, and I move Ephelial a little bit to scout ahead. The bat attacks, but no major loss there at all. Thankfully, Ephelial has a pretty good stroke of luck. And so at this point I divide my forces into two to try and account for all the area that there is on this map. Since our amount of movement is so limited, we're only 16 turns in. We have all this empty void right there. And of course we have these ghosts. They're never much fun. The raves and the shadows are not particularly fun either, so don't let them get to that stage. Part of the ghosts is their ability to absorb health from whoever they attack, which is no fun at all. But first, we seem to have encountered a bunch of trolls. And so, to explain our intentions. Now, the game gives me a choice at this point in time, and it's either we will give you gold, or we promise you freedom in our lands. The latter of which, of course, sets you against them as an insult, and isn't that good at all. Whereas, this particular one, we lose a bit of gold, but we do gain their alliance. I do not know what I was saying there. And so we hear that there used to be dwarves here, before they were all eliminated by the trolls. And so we've heard that there is apparently a lich in here. In addition to that, we also have now acquired a map of the entire surrounding area, which is pretty helpful in telling us where do we need to go? This place. And also what was explained just then is that we can blow through this particular section so we can get straight to the lich if we wanted. That being said, I've separated my forces into two, and they will start pulling back, but not just yet, I don't think. We still have to deal with the ghost. That elvish bodyguard is not doing too well. So pull him back and let another one do his job. Get Ephelial in there as well. Since Minister Hylas is pretty up close, we don't need to worry too badly about whether or not she gets poisoned, so long as she's not attacked heavily. Now, of course, since we have trolls, they're pretty strong, as you might have noticed. But however, they do have a limited amount of attacks, and the defense rating for them is not too great. If we just take a look here, the best place for them to be is in the mountains and hills, But we won't have that here. The caves, they're pretty limited. As much as us, I guess, I suppose. But they do have a large amount of health, they do regenerate each turn, and since they are chaotic, in the darkness they're pretty good fighters. But since they have a limited amount of attacks, if they miss, it can probably end up not too well for them. More healing at this point, and we try to clear up the undead at this point. We spot the leader, another one of those undead beings, of which I keep forgetting their names. Soulless. How scary, I guess. In any case, the defense ratings, as you can see, they do pretty well in villages and mountains, a bit like humans, I guess, but not like, because mountains and all. But then again, they're not that strong anyway. So, let's keep going. If we play the rest of this turn out. As you can see, trolls, pretty effective. So, after that, we have our turn now. Start trying to get up to the green team leader, eliminate him, and then we can deal with the rest. So, play the rest of the turn out. There's another ghost. Or is it? It might be a wraith, I'm not too sure. Yeah, it's a ghost. Thankfully the trolls do enough damage so we don't have to worry about that too much. And yeah, that's all I can say for the moment. I start gathering units up in that area just before where the explosion is to be detonated, just so I can have units in position. So blue team was like, I think is just like, you know, some random enemy scattered around just to annoy you before all the recruitment of green team came along. They're all gone now, needless to say. They might be lingering in the fog, but who knows. The thing about the undead is that some of them have the submerge attribute. I mean, some of the skeletons have this attribute, and what it does is it enables them to hide in spots of water like this deep water over here, and it means they're effectively hidden until you run up against them, much like these bodyguards or elvish rangers have the ambush attribute, which allows them to hide in trees. So let's play the turn and keep going. Trolls are taking over what's left of the blue team. Actually, if I recall correctly, the blue team's actually the lich's side, aka Melbourne, I think. That makes sense. It wouldn't make sense to make a random enemy team just so you could have random units scattered around. A bit wasteful, to be honest. So I decided to get these units to regroup. And we have another skeleton from the depths of the ocean. As you can see there, he just popped out of nowhere. Now, as much as the trolls are pretty strong, they're not all that smart. The AI, you can see, reflects this. They walk straight into the depths of the water. Ideally, you don't want to do that unless you've got mermaids or something. Mermen. Warriors. Or the sort. So yeah, since we need to get our units back across the bridge again, I decided to try and clear it up. Everyone starts queuing up at this point, and at this point, most of this area is covered in fog, but it doesn't really matter too much, since we're pretty much done with that area anyway. They're not really going to try and push their forces towards us, but yeah. That spearman is in a bit of trouble right there, or at least Morph. He's been with us the entire way. Good for him. The trolls continue their way on the outside. As for us, I'm regrouping. Continuing to move along. We get kind of caught off at the bridge since we don't have much movement points, but overall it's not too much of a trouble to deal with them, just as long as they don't get too lucky. Heal up a little, move a little further. The Filial moves around the outside just to secure the area. No big deal there. Some of the trolls are getting a bit low in health, and they still attack pretty aggressively. Of course, they're capturing villages left, right and centre, so there won't be much for Mebran to use after he's done with all that. Of course, this is how the game puts its name, but in dialogue it's slightly different, and this would be Mebran. Not so much a being he used to be. He's now a lich. And of course, he's got a lot of HP, he's got quite a bit of movement. He's also got quite a range of attacks, as we've seen in previous encounters, I believe, with a lich. That being said, the strategy is mostly the same. Wail on him with physical attacks, hopefully. Magical attacks are nice, but you don't want to get killed by a stray bolt of ice. We're just a bit over halfway with all these moves. The zone of control by the enemies means that our ranges are kind of limited in the movement speeds. You'd notice during ambushes where units are covered on two sides, they tend to have limited movement ranges because of, you know, having their zone of control affected. As you can see, the range attack really dealt some damage to that troll over there. Luckily enough, there seems to be plenty of units still running around, these troll whelps. Heal up, I decided to gather more units, but since I decided this is about enough time as we're going to get, we have Glid, one of our spearmen, delighted. And we create a little passageway for everyone to get through. Until we start moving everyone over. And now is the enemy's turn. Mebran moves back to his leader post so he can recruit more, I guess. But we won't know until the next turn, I don't think. Of course, the trolls go on the attack immediately. So we decided to push it. I'm not sure if it was us or the trolls that managed to get rid of Mebran. Mebran is pretty strong. Seems to get away with everything. Gets pretty lucky with all his kills as well. Alas. So I decided to move more units in. And it is at this point that we're pretty much compressed in one spot. I decided to loosen the load up for some of these, just to avoid getting killed. Of course the trolls start beating on Mebran. Of course luck can only last so long, and he is dead. And that concludes it. So join us next time as we lead Deoran and his men, as well as Minister Hylas and our elven friends, all the way back to Wesnoth yet again. Was the entire area Wesnoth? I don't know. Until then, take care.